Hello, and welcome to Jason Candice Experience. I'm your host, Jason Candice. The Jason Candice Experience is brought to you by Candice HR. At Candice HR, we deliver HR to companies with 49 or fewer people with our automated HR platform, and while providing you a dedicated HR business partner. Our guest today is Candice Dietz. Candice, you ready to be great today?
Yes, I am.
Candice is a co-founder and CEO at GIVESPACE. She is also an active duty military spouse of almost 20 years and a mom of two. Her professional experience spans 20 plus years of nonprofit, community building, and marketing public relations experience, with GiveSpace being her second entrepreneurial journey. She enjoys the outdoors, traveling, coffee, ice cream, and is a lover of learning. She and her family have lived across 4 continents and currently call Hawaii home. Candice, thank you for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Jason, for having me on the Candice podcast.
So Candice, on your LinkedIn, you did a company before called Alexander and Sophia, I think. Can you talk about that experience? That was your first entrepreneurial
yes
thing, right?
Yeah, it was actually. So Alexander and Sophia was a clothing brand that we branded and designed for children. So when this came out of when I first had my first child and realized that there wasn't any kind of, everything kind of had little cutesy teddy bears, or everything was really branded for girls or for boys, nothing kind of neutral that could go either way. And just, so I wanted to, my co-founder and I, for Alexander and Sophia, we wanted to create kind of a more modern brand. So that's what Alexander and Sophia is. It's or was a modern children's clothing brand. And we did that, set it up as an e-commerce, worked with some incredible brand partners like Honest Company. And back then they were just starting out as well, Freshly Picked, and then worked with, groups like Guilt and Zulily. So that was how I first got into my first entrepreneurial journey. And that's actually how GiveSpace was birthed. So then during that process, my co-founder and I thought, okay, we want to give back to a component for our communities, but there wasn't an easy way to do that for us. It was really difficult actually to get in touch with nonprofits, and which is not surprising because I do have experience working with a lot of nonprofits in the past. But, as a nonprofit, you are very strapped for time and usually staffing and funds. So if you're not like a big brand that's going to offer a large amount of dollars, the response limits that come through, you don't get back to them that quickly. So it took us about 6 months just to establish contact. And that was a really long time. We thought, why is it so hard to give back? And that was back in 2017 or so. So we worked through the process, and we thought, gosh, there's got to be a better way to do this. So came the idea, right? We started with this idea of GiveSpace. And let me tell you, when we finally decided to move forward and incorporate and move our resources to build out the software platform for GiveSpace, when we presented this idea, people thought we were crazy. So this was early in the beginning of 2020. And then in March, right, COVID and the pandemic started. So we were kind of in that process of starting a new company when all of this, now we're on year 2 of this pandemic. So we didn't know how this would go, but we kept, we thought, okay, this is a good time for us to build. We're going to build this during this period. But what we found is that there was so much change happening during that period. And for GiveSpace, I think the social demand for a product like ours was accelerated, by at least 5 years. So now it feels like, I wish, we're always like fighting against time, trying to get this built quickly. But good news is, even today, we got, we're now partners with Shopify, which is the world's largest e-commerce platform. So that launched today, which is super exciting for GiveSpace. And that's something we've been building here internally for the past, at least 8 months now. So day in and day out. So awesome. Shout out to our CTO on that accomplishment. That was a long-winded answer.
No, that's great. So I mean, I have to tell you, it's kind of surprising and disappointing that it takes so long for most nonprofits to get back to you. Like you think like customer service for this, you think like for them being such short resource, the customer service like the number one thing on their plate, right?
Right.
To like bring in customers, bring in, donations. That's kind of disappointing, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think it's because they're really focused on fulfilling their mission, which is doing the work that they are committed to doing, which is helping whichever segment of industry or customer base that they are supplying for. So, and I think especially, I think now we're seeing a lot more funding into that charity stream, but before it was even more difficult, right? So we have crazy statistics. In 2020, $305 billion was donated by individual donors. We're not talking about foundations. We're not talking about family philanthropies. We're just talking about individual donors like you and I. That was donated to charities. But companies, on the other hand, only donated $28 billion. So you see a huge disconnect, right? And we know companies are now really focusing on that social impact, social responsibility piece. So then the other layer of GiveSpace, this is what it's tackling now, is companies want to engage their own customers and their own consumers into deciding which funds that they want to give to, but there's no easy way to do that. So GiveSpace actually provides that solution for companies themselves. So now as they integrate GiveSpace, they can now give that responsibility of choice to their own customer segment, and their customer segment will now decide where those charity dollars will go. So if they commit a 2% for their corporate social responsibility, instead of just as a corporation saying, hey, we're going to donate 2% to this X charity, now they can actually incorporate their customer input into where those dollars go. And they can do it per checkout if it's an e-commerce. If it's a app product, they can do it post-purchase and have the consumer decide. We integrate into other e-commerce checkout carts. So there's a variety of options on how to get this integrated. And then the other segment is right now, so you have software companies that, cater just to nonprofits or cater just to consumers, but there's no real 360 kind of ecosystem in this model. So that's the problem GiveSpace solves. It's we have a nonprofit portal that connects, and nonprofits are just beneficiaries. They do not pay anything to use our platform. Companies utilize our platform to bring the connection between nonprofit customer and themselves. And then customers themselves, they can create their own charity funds through our platform as well. So individuals, if you want to incorporate a giving segment into your portfolio or into your tax dollars, you could do that through GiveSpace as well.
So is this something along the lines where you go to like a store and you're checking out and they say, do you check yes if you want to round up or you want to add $2 to that? Is this like the same thing? Is this something different?
Similar, very similar, but we don't operate point of sale. We're all on the e-commerce end. The difference is at those point of sale, the company still selects which charity, right? You don't get to say, well, I want to support Blue Star Families. You don't get a choice in where those dollars go, even though you're the donor. Similar to that, we have additional features. So companies can now run various campaigns to donate. So they can do a company funded, which means they're funding the entire thing. So every purchase, they're going to donate $3 of every checkout to your charity of choice, Jason. So now when you check out, you get to select the charity that $3 that the company is paying for your purchase will go towards. Then they have fundraising, which is strictly where the customer, just like you had mentioned, customer decides, yeah, I'm going to add $1 to my purchase, and I want that dollar to go towards X charity. And then there's a matching component when companies say, hey, we're going to match up to $10,000. And then, the customer donates, and then the company will come back and do that match up to that amount.
So your first company, Alexander Sophia, that's shut down, right? It's not in business anymore.
Correct. That is no longer operating.
Can you talk about some reasons why you decided to shut it down? And then second part, talk about some of the lessons you learned the first time that are like making this one more successful for you.
Yeah, definitely. So a few things with Alexander Sophia. We wanted a more sustainable business model. And if you look at fashion, I'm not familiar how familiar you are with the fashion industry, but it's actually difficult, right? Because you plan at least 2 seasons out before the season actually goes into retail and sales. And at that time, when we started back in 2012, it's better now because there's options out there. You had to bulk order and, order your designs and order all of the fabrics and get everything produced. Then get your orders in from your partners and your retailers, and then it goes into sale. So it's a long cycle. It's also, we realize that in fashion that you constantly have to come up with new designs. It has a lot of waste. So those are things that we wanted to veer away from and figure out a better model to move forward with. And so, with GiveSpace, there's a huge sustainability component for us. Not only do we, help companies meet their sustainable development goals, but our footprint that we leave behind is very minimal. And that's something that was really important to us as we grew as a company. The second reason is we saw a potential, right, for a new market segment and holes in that segment that we knew we could gap. So I have the nonprofit and community building experience behind me. Co-founder is a former marketing executive for one of the top 3 entertainment labels. And so she has a powerhouse of experience and handles the digital marketing end. And then we were fortunate enough to round out our team with a CTO because we both don't have the technical skills behind us, but we do have the vision forward. So all of these things are things that we thought about in how we can better use our experience, talents, and vision, in a world that we wanted to create for our kids growing up, to create a product that has a longer shelf life and can help others while building.
Yeah, I can't remember who it was, but I had a guest on a podcast a while ago. And her company was based on all the textile waste out there. Like people don't realize how much textile waste is out there, right? Because
Yes,
most people buy new set of clothes every season or buy new shoes and they donate it. But where does the donation really go? Or they throw it away. There's literally I can't remember the number, but hundreds of millions and maybe trillions of tons of textiles just out there. Like that. What's that thing that we're talking about? The big thing of plastic in the ocean that's 10 tons or whatever, It's just incredible the waste that's out there.
It is. It really is. And we see a lot now kind of reinventing that and finding more solutions in the textile waste, but it's still an enormous, I guess, mountain to tackle. It's just, and fashion is constantly evolving. So there's got to be a way. And I'm being more mindful myself into creating a more minimal, but I guess classic pieces that will last a longer time rather than just going with trendy fashion.
So Candice, one thing I admire about you, you use all the resources available. You've taken part in Blue Startups, Founders Gym, PenFed, Patriot Bootcamp, Vets in Tech. And probably a host of others I don't really know about, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk about how do you go about finding these resources? How do you utilize them?
Yeah.
And what do you use to gain value from all those things?
Definitely. So I think I'll start off by saying the the military entrepreneur community, albeit small, is incredible. It's filled with resources. Jason, that's how I met you. And I think that's a great way to, if you are involved in that community, a great way to get started. I think there's a community of, baseline understanding of what we have all kind of experienced and have gone through. And that feeling of community and helping each other and sharing resources. So I'm always happy to do that as well. I think research is really important. So I actually started GiveSpace, in conjunction by doing the Founder Institute program in Seattle. And that was great because I had never done a tech startup, right? I had entrepreneur
And so
experience.
one thing about Founder Institute, people don't know, it's like the early idea stages.
Yes.
I never been through it, but everyone I know say it is like a ground of like, they don't destroy you, but like, you better come correct. Like, there's no boosting around. There's no joking around. It's not, I'm doing this as a side hobby. You better be locked and loaded because what I understand, they're going to destroy you if you're not straight. Is that true?
That is 100% true. For where you are in the ideation phase of creating your company, Founder Institute was grueling, but also incredibly resourceful. So it set us up to be able to launch from there on. And I think one of the things as being a military spouse and having moved so often, I have a large community at large, right? But haven't set roots somewhere where I can, where I have a community to just kind of reach out to, especially in the professional world. So that was really helpful for Founder Institute while I was, figuring out mentors, advisors, trying to, navigate that space in the tech industry where I felt like I didn't have the connections that I needed. So that was also another great advantage is the network that they provide. I will say that there's probably, if there's a group of 25 entrepreneurs that start the program, only 6 to 8 end up graduating.
Yeah,
so,
that's always heard.
Yeah.
And one thing I heard to everyone who graduates that I've known, they've always say it's like a hard experience, but like it was the best thing for the company, right? It's like it grew them so much. Like everyone just loves the process. If quote, however common if they finish, right?
Right, exactly. So, so we luckily finished the program and made it through. And then from that, launched other opportunities. So I think that was really the stepping point. Then I learned about, Patriot Boot Camp. And then through Patriot Boot Camp, I also learned about Founder Gym, and Patriot Boot Camp has connections with other, resources. So through them, I received a Google for Startup scholarship to attend Founder Gym, and did that course or cohort. And then after that, applied for Blue Startups here in Hawaii, and thankfully was accepted into this latest cohort. We just finished our cohort in November. And that was another launching point for us. The network there has been great. And that is a pre-seed accelerator program. So I went from, ideation phase and then to the pre-seed. And then now, here we are, we have 2 products now on the market, and looking forward to 2022 with a lot of growth opportunities for us.
So I think it's safe to assume that you and I be where you're at right now with all these programs you took part in.
Right. For me, it was pivotal. I think, our co-founder has incredible networks in the business development and customer base, which has been helpful for us. But the actual, lessons in starting a new company and making sure you have the right boxes checked, and being set up for we're looking at raising venture capital funds in the near future. So making sure all of those blocks are in line for us as we grow has been very, very helpful. So I know that side of our business has a we don't experience anytime we go through a due diligence any kind of I guess setbacks.
So Candice, back to nonprofits for a minute. Like, a lot of people, they want to, donate money to different nonprofits, whatever. But how can they best make sure the money's going to the right place, right? Like, there's horror stories, like for every dollar you give a certain nonprofit, they spend 95 cents on, admin costs,
Admin costs, yeah.
Is there some place people can go to see like how that's broken down?
Sure. So we use Charity Navigator and GuideStar as our vetting points as well. And they have, those two entities are there just to do that. And you can look up the reports for almost every registered nonprofit there is, and how they use their funds. They're even graded either by stars or by a grade rating. And we do the double process of checking the nonprofits as well for GiveSpace with those two, with Charity Navigator and GuideStar. So that's one of the checkpoints that we also filter our nonprofits through. That's a really good point. The other thing is, I think grassroots organizations are really taking hold and doing a lot of great work regionally in the communities that you are residing in or have a special connection to. And those may not have those ratings, but I think that, as crazy as this sounds, the word of mouth and the social media aspect of those grassroots organizations are a good way to get a feel for the work they do on the ground. And because it takes about a year, right, to go through that cycle of getting the ratings and the checks and the stars from these vetting organizations.
So can you talk some about the challenges of being a non-tech founder and how you finally found your CTO?
Yes. So it was a hurdle in the sense that I didn't have the right terminology or knowledge of how to speak the tech lingo. But I knew that the groundwork, then the framework for what we wanted, we could address and sketch out into a framework. The challenge with finding if you're not from the tech space, it is challenging to find your technical CTO or your co-founder. We were fortunate enough to have an introduction from someone we knew and a former colleague that introduced us to our CTO. And we worked together. So, you hear this advice a lot in the entrepreneur community. It's before you get married, make sure you date a long time, right? So, and that we're not talking about personal relationships, we're talking about working relationships. So we worked with our CTO for a good 9 months before, a solid 9 months, having calls multiple times weekly and commencing on projects and showing deliverables before we stepped into that agreement process. So, and it has to be mutually agreed upon and beneficial. And I think the most important thing is you want to make sure that person is as vested as you are into the project and the vision. And for us, we were very fortunate to find that.
And so how did you make sure this person had the skills you needed? Like a lot of people say I can build this or do whatever, but they actually don't know how to, right?
Right.
How do you make sure they had the tech skills that you needed?
I think so. When you initially, if you are, I would say work on a deliverable basis. So do it project based, where if they deliver a certain item, then the invoice comes and you pay it out. Don't do a full, I'm going to pay 100% of this up front. Negotiate it. So you do the 30% initially, and then the 70% upon delivery. And I think that's a good way to see, like, okay, this is what we asked for and we discussed. Make sure you get it all outlined in a document, and then set timelines and goals and meet, a few times a week, and have them show you the progress as you go through the time. The difficulty is, in the tech space, there's always bugs. So we learned that in the first few months, never, believe the timeline that's initially agreed upon. You got to add in a filter there and add in an additional few weeks for that. So, and I think that's a good way to test out, the relationship. That way you're not investing all of the resources up front, but also demanding that they produce an outcome before you also invest. And then there's, I would also say, if you, through your networks, if you have someone that is proficient, to also, ask them to spare the 10 minutes with this person that you are talking to, your potential software developer or CTO, even if it's contracted, to see if they do have the right skills. And then as we learned, as you get further along in the process and you're looking to build out your team a little bit more on the tech end, during the interview process, give them a project that they need to finish. And you can do that. Our CTO was able to do that, launch small projects where they have a certain time limit, and then they have to complete that within that time limit. And that was one of the ways we did our most recent interviews.
Candice, can you talk about how you educated yourself in tech? All the terms, MVP, product market fit. Like you use the term bugs. People are like, bugs. What do bugs got to do with software, right? Right. Talk about how you educated yourself and got up to speed on the lingo, so to speak.
Yeah, so you can read all the books you want, but until you actually start working on it and looking on it. So now I can actually go into a GitHub and navigate the platform in a very minimal way. But before I was like, what is GitHub, right? That's where you store all your codes and can launch development projects there. I think for me, because I am such a learner that does, learns by doing, and I love that. For me, it was actually diving into the space with our CTO. And as he spoke to me in certain terminology and lingo, that's when, everything that I've read on very basic startup language, software for dummies, is where it kind of all started to click. So bugs, for example, are things that you run into when you write a code and then you're actually testing it, but the flow doesn't happen exactly, right? There's something that stopped the flow. That's a bug. So you want to go back and fix that bug. So I think that for me, I think it depends on the type of learner you are. So if you're more visual, maybe studying it more with an actual like coding platform in front of you. But for me, it was actually working with our CTO, hearing him speak the terminology, going back and referencing. And then it just, all of these terms flow. Startup world has a whole lingo term in itself, right? So that was another year of learning all the acronyms, just like when you're in the military and coming new, all the new acronyms that you need.
So how have you dealt with this? Let's suppose you tell Bob, a regular person, hey, Bob, regular person, I need you to get up and close the door. Bob's going to get up and close the door. But if you tell Bob, the developer, you got to say, Bob, the developer, get up at a 90-degree angle at 20% torque, at this angle, this degree, all these minute details. How have you worked that like the communication?
That definitely has been a learning experience. I've learned to be very detailed, and it may not be exactly in that terminology, but when we sit down and do our next phase of development or our next phase of product iterations, I learned to be very, very detailed and question every part of the workflow. So we'll go through the workflow and give every case scenario. And that's only learned through feedback from our beta users directly. So we're so grateful for them for that honest feedback. They'll say, you know, things like, even on the user experience end, right? They'll go through our platform, and for us, because we see it every day and we've worked through this for so long, it makes sense. It looks like, oh, why would you not understand that? But when you put it in front of someone, a new user, they'll come back and say, so exactly what should I select here? And we realize, oh, we need to make that explicitly clear in the description. So those are the things that we learned. And then even in the workflow process, right, because we handle so many different outputs of how you can use GiveSpace, every scenario almost has a distinct workflow if you're choosing between those three categories I had mentioned earlier. So being very explicit and doing diagrams and sketches and going through various scenarios through that experience is really important. And some of those you won't catch until you actually have you have a beta user. So I think those two, in order to have a successful product, and we're iterating every day and finding new things to change every day and things that can always be better. And it is because of those new experiences and getting in front of new users that we get that feedback. And then I think that, you know, selecting, sometimes you get too much feedback and not everything needs to be a fix right away. But when you see a pattern of everyone pointing out a certain thing, or you see a pattern of something that could be done better, I think those are definite immediate fixes that need to happen.
So you live in Hawaii right now. And I think most people, when they think of tech and startups, I don't think anyone thinks of Hawaii. Can you talk about the tech startup scene in Hawaii?
Yeah, surprisingly, I think Hawaii is, through the pandemic, has realized that heavily that the economy needs to diversify, right? Not so solely based on hospitality and tourism, and tech is one of the industries that is growing. I think a lot of entrepreneurs and tech executives also relocated to Hawaii during the pandemic. So that's caused an additional, you know, interest. I think through Blue Startups, their first company that went public in Hawaii also happened this past fall. Volta, they're an electric car charging company. They started 10 years ago here in Hawaii. So I think, you know, there's definitely a lot of rumble happening in the past 5 years. And I think you will only see that growth happening even further. It's very exciting. It's an exciting time for Hawaii. And I think a lot of business leaders and innovators are, you know, here on island and abroad, you know, are taking a special interest. It's such a unique place for hospitality, tourism, sustainability. And I think all of these segments can tie into the tech space.
How long is a flight from Hawaii to the States?
Well, depends on where you are. West Coast, 6 hours, 5 to 6 hours. And then to the East Coast, 9 to 12 hours, depending on the headwind.
Okay. So next, talk about leading remote teams. And then what's your process of making sure some you're going to bring on the team can actually do remote work? Because I'm a firm believer everyone cannot do remote work.
Yeah.
It's a skill set to it.
Definitely. I agree with that. And, you know, my husband will agree with that too. He is a definite, I'm a hybrid at best. So I think you have to assess your team, and personalities are very important. And I've remotely worked for, 10 years now. I've led remote teams for almost 8 years. So that was I would say, a definite positive and benefit during, you know, this time of when we all had to migrate to remote for a while. But I think you have to assess and address the needs of each individual employee. And I think that whole space of your workforce, you know, that's all getting revamped as well. But some people thrive in remote right, capacity, others hate it. So because of the situation of where we are, we state first that we are remote first. I think we need to make that clear and make sure that, you know, people who we want on our team know that we're remote first. You know, eventually as we grow and can have a headquarters space, I think that will also be hybrid and not fully, you know, in office. Of course, they have the option to do that, but we will always offer that flexibility. But currently we are remote first, and we make that explicitly known so that they know if that's the right fit for them. And I think, you know, I think people now can make that determination, especially after a year and a half of having that experience, if it's the right fit for them or not.
So you've worked in the private sector, nonprofit, public. Can you talk about the difference in each one? Like, was your process to work these places the same, or you had to change it up? Can you talk about that some?
I think so. There's definitely a different culture in each segment. And, you know, there are a lot of similarities, and I think the baseline similarities are all there, right? Yeah, adequate, oh goodness. So, you know, respect, having empathy for your team, and leading with a very focused, and very, I guess, focus driven model of what deliverables you want at a certain period of time, and setting those parameters. I think across the board, that's good. I think some, you know, the startup space is definitely its own culture, something that I had to get more familiar with myself. It's hardworking people, but they're also very casual. So I wasn't used to that, right? Coming from when I first, you know, worked with different nonprofits, or with in corporate, or in education. So that was different. I came from a much more formal. So that took some getting used to. I remember that, thinking, oh, I can be a lot more casual in this space, even in the way I converse, right? So I would say that's kind of a cultural difference. It may not be in every case, but that's, in my experience, what I experienced. I think with, you know, public and public sector, there's a lot more bureaucracy, lots of layers of approvals, and because you're dealing with public funds. And then in education, a good balance of incorporating, you know, student, parent, and educator, plus admin, and your faculty and staff. So yeah, it's interesting. And I think I'm grateful for having all of those experiences.
Next, can you talk some about being a military spouse?
Yeah, of course. That's goodness. I think it's a difficult one to explain. And I think it's one that, going through it, you have a community there that the ups and downs you go through as a military spouse, the unexpected is always there. So I think a community like ours has a lot of resilience. I know that word is used so frequently, but for a reason. I think we're all in some way, you know, for me, there's a lot of things where, you know, I think, oh, well, no problem, right? Because we can adapt and easily adjust to something. When you're having to be taken out of your comfort zone so often and so frequently, and reinvent yourself each and every time, there's a certain understanding that you just create, right? For your surrounding environments, your surrounding communities, your surrounding demands, your surrounding, needs. So I think that is, that builds a certain character. And, you say one difficulty, right? When you read or learn about certain traits that help develop a person, when you go through that so often, sometimes I think, I hear a lot, whoa, how do you do that? So currently I'm going through this water crisis with no fresh running clean water. We're currently in a hotel situation, and then also having a startup and then also juggling 2 kids, right? So there's a lot, and but you just do it and you just roll with it and you keep moving forward. And I think there's, when I actually pause and think about, oh my gosh, okay, 11 moves in almost 20 years, right? That's how it, and we're talking across countries and states. And then also sometimes it's a couple moves within the same duty station. So there's a lot, I think, there that we're constantly having to jump up and figure things out and grab all the moving pieces and lay them all down. Give me a week and I can settle into a new location with a whole new environment and, have my kids settled. So we're at that point. But when you think about it, it's very stressful. So there's no time to stop and think. You just have to keep moving.
And one thing I thought about, I never thought about before, because my wife took care of all the other stuff. Like, but every time you move, you have school-age kids, you have to be concerned, okay, how do I find the best school for my kids, right? You might go from one school that's top-notch and move somewhere else that's not that great, right? Mm-hmm. And I just thought about that, because some parents have, especially on the spouses, going to a new school and making new friends and all that kind of stuff is a stressful thing too, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. And, the kids, I think you have kids too who grew up, moving every so often. They are also, gosh, so resilient, but they don't know a different life other than this, right? So if you grew up in this is all you know. And there's a part of me that holds a lot of mom guilt for that. Like, they don't know what it's like to have a stable group of friends that have been with them through this, right? They have long distance relationships with friends for a long time, but not that every day. I grew up with a core set of friends that, I grew up with, and they don't have that, not even with their extended family. So we do our best to keep certain groups and segments, and if you have, because you've gone through that process, other advice you can offer. I have a middle schooler and one that is in preschool. So quite an age gap there as well.
Yeah, I think 2 things is, like, people don't realize, like, you moving around a lot versus someone who's there all the time. If they're all the time, you're gonna have the same coaches, same teammates. If you're playing sports, where mm-hmm. if you move somewhere else in 9th grade, you got to prove yourself all over. You might have been the greatest running back or best basketball player, best whatever, your previous school. Right. No one knows your new place, right? You got to prove yourself. It's gonna take time to get rid of the person. Another thing too, like, people don't realize this. Another sacrifice you make. Of course, people talk about the deployments, all that kind of stuff. Moving. Like my family, like no one ever saw my kids play anything at school, right? I never saw my nieces and nephews play stuff at school. We never did Thanksgiving with the family. It's always a different place. Like, you miss all that stuff, right?
Right, exactly. And I think that's what's most frustrating for our oldest, is that every time she has to move, she has to prove herself again and then again. So as she gets older, I see that frustration. That's the frustration. She doesn't mind so much the new environment or the new house or, having the opportunity to experience a new place, but she definitely gets frustrated with the fact that, I have to do this all over again and start from zero again. So that's a great point, Jason. I agree with that.
Has this ever happened to you? So we were stationed in Italy, and so we left Italy and flew to Dallas, Texas for a 2-week vacation, right? Do all those flights to get over here.
Yeah.
And of course, like, some relatives will say, hey, when are you gonna come visit me? I'm 30 minutes away. Like, are you kidding me right now? Like, seriously, did you just say that? We've flown like literally hundreds of miles and hours and all this stuff, bringing 3 young kids, and you can't drive 30 minutes. Has that ever happened to you?
Oh yeah, all the time. all the time. And, I just say, they just don't know, right? That's how I get through it. They just don't know. So yeah, but it is definitely like so exhausting. And sometimes you're right, like even taking that trip to visit family when you kind of need to decompress from, life as it is it's actually stressful.
So what's something about military spouse life that you think the general public doesn't know?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think the positive is they don't know how strong the bonds are across our community. I think we all go through a certain experience like deployments or losing a service member from our unit, or those experiences that they don't get to experience. And there's a really powerful and strong bond there. On the negative side, just like you had mentioned, just those little things like not being able to have any of your family visit your kids' sporting events, or visit schools, or be a part of their everyday life, right? They'll never really get to experience any part of that. So those are kind of, I think, even the little things, I think people take that for granted, right? Or not being able to go see my my nephew or my nieces in certain aspects of their life. So yeah, I think, I think sometimes those little things are the things that are most not seen. I think we hear a lot about military spouse unemployment, or military spouse hardships of, deployments, but we never hear about, or we don't hardly hear about the little everyday things that we miss out on.
Here's something crazy. So, we were stationed in Germany, Italy, all the world.
Mhm.
Only one person came to visit us. My wife's sister came to visit us while we were in Korea. Only time someone came to visit. And you think we're in Italy. I was like 30 minutes from Venice. Like, surely you can afford like a plane trip or something, right? But someone came to visit in Seoul, Korea. Yeah. Not Germany, not Italy, not all of Europe. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. Seoul's a great place. A
Yeah.
lot of stuff to do, but you just like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. Yeah. Fortunately, we've had, my sister and her family visit us at almost every duty station several times. But that was, and yeah, and certain members of our family, but the majority have never, ever, no matter where we are, a cool place in the world, haven't made the trek.
So do most other military spouses get what you do? They get you're an entrepreneur and you're doing a startup, or like, why is Candice not volunteering as this function for the unit?
Yeah, I took a step back from that these past few years, and I think the whole kind of space is a little evolving. I think before you'd see, and still, don't get me wrong, Jason, the majority are strictly military spouses, right? They don't want, for some reason, there's a huge disconnect between employed or entrepreneur military spouses versus just military spouses who are dedicated to home, which is either way is fine. But the majority, the culture here is still where, gosh, how do I say this? It's still all catered to the expectation of military spouses holding down the home front. So when certain things happen, or we have a crisis situation, or there are unit activities happening, they're all catered towards the stay-at-home military spouses. They don't take into account, or often do not take into account, spouses who may be working, or so that's, I think, speaking on that, and just making it known that you are a working military spouse helps kind of change that paradigm a little bit. It's something I always have to kind of interject, because if there's 10 of us, in a group, there's only 1 or 2 of us that are actually working. So I think more and more though, there's definitely will be a culture shift in that.
So what's your opinion on this? And we'll focus on military spouses community, but you can talk about any community anywhere. And this is my opinion. It's like, there's like usually like 1 or 2% of people like you, like doing great things, trying to make the war better, like doing extra stuff. And most people are like, oh, woe be me. I can't change my circumstances. The war's against me. Why do you think some people like have their drive and some people don't?
Oh, I don't know. That's a question. I don't know. I think a lot of it, I don't know. I can't answer that question. I would say, from my experiences in a lot of nonprofit training is that sometimes if you have a difficult background or come from a more disadvantaged, I guess, landscape, then there are certain things that I feel are very far-fetched to reach. But a lot of it is, I honestly, I don't know, but I think
You just know that you just know that you have it, right?
Yeah, the internal motivation I think is important, but I also think you need to have mentors or opportunities or someone believing in you or telling you you can do it. So that's something, yeah, it's something I'm always actually on the side thinking about when I think about, our school age children and how they are developing right into this next, as they grow because of, the age and what I see, in the different school systems that we have been through with my daughter, and how certain schools really push that drive and that language into their everyday, and how certain schools don't, and it's a very negative. So I don't know if that has something to do with it, but that's a really good question. I wish I knew the answer to that question.
So Candice, next, can you talk about how you build community?
I think community, the first thing is it has to be authentic. So I think if you need to either have a distinct passion because of an experience you went through to build a certain community base, or you need to be a member of that community to build the community. I think trying to build a community because you have alternate agendas is always going to fail. People are going to see through it. So truly being able to connect and having a personal connection to building that community, I think is key and essential. And then also if you're depending, right? So I've done community building as a volunteer and then also in my professional career. And I have never taken a professional community building mission without having a direct personal connect to that, because I think it's really difficult to build that. So, and sometimes it's just having the understanding and providing the space for others to come in and build that community from where you started, right? So, but I think that distinct understanding of that community has to be there, and that's challenging for a lot of companies. So, we get this question a lot. That's why I think diverse teams are so important. Whether it's having, gender diversity or whatever diversity, because certain things you can see, but you can't directly relate to. And in order to build an authentic community, you need to be able to understand the needs of that community and the desires of that community from not just one angle, but from various different angles and experiences.
So Candice, you're a mom, a wife, you're building a startup, you're doing this water crisis. I'm sure you have other things going on a daily basis. Like let's say you have a priority list of 1 to 100. How do you make sure on a daily basis you focus on priorities 1, 2, and 3 versus going to priority number 92?
Right. That's really important. I do a actual, a vision board that does the priorities, overall priorities of every segment of my life. So that's a personal, professional GiveSpace board. And that is the overall vision, right? And then I also have a daily to-do task list. And these are to-dos that I must do in order to sustain, all of my different roles in life. And then I have my weekly, and then company to-do list, right? Of whether it's, writing an updated newsletter or getting the next, interview for the next blog post. So for our internal blog. And it's, I think for me, lists are key. I could not operate without my lists. And I'm also very paper and pen list person. So everything you'll see a lot of everything written and then checked off. And for me, that's how I prioritize what needs to get done now, within this week, and then within this month, and then overall for the year. So for me, it's very visual and it's very hands-on.
So Candice, some people famously work 100-hour weeks. Some people don't work weekends. I know someone who works like 21 days in a row and take 4 days off. How do you work your schedule?
That's a good question. I have seasons. So I worked, really long hours during our push for, Giving Tuesday and beyond through the holiday season, and then took like a week and a half off of just just checking my email once a day for a few hours, and that's it. So I'll push really hard and then take time to wind down and make sure I have the time to wind down, or I get burnt out. But I don't have I don't work weekends or anything like that. I think that's really hard as a startup founder to do that. I just have to find, time and hours, but I do make sure for my sanity that I do block off certain segments of time where I kind of give myself time to rejuvenate and refocus. So how about you, Jason? How do you juggle your time?
I probably suck at that, right? Because I'm always working to do something. But I try my best at least once a week to take a 2-hour break, right? Like yesterday, I went to dinner with my niece for a couple hours.
Oh, that's
I might have a beer with a friend, always try do small things, right?
Mm-hmm.
The
Yeah.
best I can.
Yeah. And that's, yeah, I could say there are days when I'm replying to emails at 3 a.m. and that's just what it is. And then, but there are days when I'll take a full day off, and just have fun with my kids. So yeah, I think balance is good. I'm working towards a better balance.
Like last October, a friend of mine invited me to go elk hunting with him here in Washington. I'd never been elk hunting before,
Yeah.
right? But I have all this stuff going on. I really can't afford to take off. There's be no internet, no nothing. But when and where I ever get a chance to go elk hunting again?
Right.
Probably never, right? So, those you got to, balance it some kind of way.
Yeah.
I think. So, Candice, next, how do you take care of yourself? How you make sure you don't burn out? How you take care of your wellness, all that kind of stuff?
So for me, I silent time, meditation time is key, just for 5 minutes every day. Because I am, juggling being a mom of 2 kids and they're involved in their activities. And this past week had to readjust to having them home again after, because of all the COVID stuff happening. And then also, my husband's an active duty, he's an active duty soldier. So he works crazy hours. I do most of all the things on the home side. And then being a co-founder and CEO of a startup, that never stops. So that silent time of even just 5 minutes a day is, for me, something I need to focus and ground myself in the day. I love when I get a chance to just take a hike. I think Hawaii has been such a blessing for that because there's so many outdoor opportunities here. So that I try to at least get out and do something outdoors, whether it's in the ocean or in the mountains, at least once a week.
So next, you've been to 4 continents and done a lot of traveling, of course. Do you have a favorite place that you want to go back to visit?
I would say there are so many favorite places, but I would say the most memorable experience for me was visiting the Middle East, because it was so vastly different from anything I had been exposed to. And, not to say it was good or bad in any way, it was just so different and eye-opening for me, to feel the different feelings I had about, how to be embedded into a culture that I did not have a familiarity about, as I thought I had. It was just such a learning experience at every turn. So for me, that was an incredible trip. And oh gosh, I would love to go back to experience other parts of that region.
Is there a place you've been to where you actually liked it, but most people are like, you like this? Like, that's crazy. Why do you like this place for? Like something off the wall random place?
Interesting. No, I think I don't know. I find joy in almost every new place or new experience. So I think maybe it's just who I surround myself with, but they feel the same way, right? So they enjoy everything that's different about a certain travel experience or a cultural experience.
So Candice, you already talked about the sun, but can you go into more detail about how you started GiveSpace, what you're focused on right now, and what your vision is for the future of the company?
Yeah, sure. Well, our vision this year is to expand our customer segment. So with this new launch in Shopify, we will be able to really branch out into e-commerce, which is exciting for us. And then looking at partnerships in other sectors like travel and hospitality and tourism. I think a new wave of sustainable and giving back as you travel, learning about organizations that are making differences and the struggles that each region may experience. I think that's really important to a conscious traveler. And, as we grow GiveSpace, our vision is to create new experiences for both the companies and in turn their customers. And I think that's what's most important, and will create an authentic community for each of those segments. And what I mean by that is, we hear of new ways to experience life, right? So I want to make sure that GiveSpace also offers that opportunity in a way that gives back. So not just here's $1, but hey, let's see what our collective dollars have done. And having, the nonprofits more involved in the process so they can showcase, how we've all partnered together into making an impact in, certain communities. And our goal is to really highlight grassroots work and opportunities that the grassroots organizations are doing, and listening to the end customers. So that's our companies' customers themselves, and helping our companies build out, those requests. And that's kind of our vision for GiveSpace is we want to, our tagline is powering the world to give back together. And we want to be a tool that builds into all of these segments so that we all feel like we're connected and not segmented off trying to make an impact in our world.
So Candice, I'm guessing that you just didn't call up Shopify one day and say, let's work together. Can you talk a little bit about how that partnership, so to speak, came about, like the work and stuff you had to do for that?
Yeah. So the easy, or not the easy, but the most fruitful, I guess, part, even for the companies, of using GiveSpace is seeing how the nonprofits, right? Seeing how the companies and their consumers have, chosen and given back some of these dollars to a certain nonprofit, and to see the work that's been done with those dollars is most rewarding, right? Like, oh my gosh, this actually had an impact. It wasn't just a checkout. And really building that experience and segment in is our goal for 2022. And that really happens when you can develop these really close-knit partnerships with the nonprofits and give them easy tools for the nonprofits to utilize as well. So, and that's a segment that we are product building right now.
Can you talk about this? And this is something I have a problem with, right? Like, you're a star founder, you're in the weeds, you're grind every day. How do you make sure that you stop and you know what? I actually have made progress. I'm far ahead than I was 6 months ago or a year ago. I'm actually making progress I didn't make. How do you make sure you do that?
That's really good. There are times when you feel like you're stuck in a rut and just running on the wheel, and you forget to look up. But there's days like today, for example, when you've hit a milestone that you've been working on, and you can stop and then look around and look and see, oh my gosh, we were able to, just with our beta trials this past month, complete donations of over $12,000 into charities. And then now we completed this new product and its launch. So today was my day to come up, look around, and really celebrate and take time to do that. So I think you have to have those milestones. And once you reach them, you have to take the time to stop and look and congratulate the entire team on the progress, because no one ever gets there alone.
So there's something else I struggle with too, is patience. Like, as an entrepreneur, I think you have to have patience. Like, the myth is, get an idea, 6 months later, you're cashing the big money, right?
Right.
You talk about the importance of having patience and knowing that's actually a long term. It's like a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, it's definitely a marathon. And that's something I'm learning every day. And my personality is, I kind of have a perfectionist personality, and I'm very goals driven and, vision driven. So, and I drill those things into our team too. And, thankfully I have, our core team is so good at, let's stop and refocus and see how far we've come. And I think that's so important. You just mentioned that too, Jason. And I think having people surround you that you trust and that know you well enough, and them and know the quirks and ins and outs, is also very important to have that around you, to refocus when you need to, or to focus when you need to, or pause when you need to, get input when you need, feedback when you need. I think those things are all really important. And yeah, I could say I could attribute all of that to the team as well. We do that for each other, and we check each other and we balance each other and make sure that there's time to breathe, and there's time to sprint when we need to sprint, and there's time to take a long jog.
So Candice, you always hear, if you're an entrepreneur or star founder, or the case be, never quit, keep grinding, keep on going, whatever, case be. But is there a time someone should stop? Should startup entrepreneurs have like a quote unquote, like a red line?
I think yes, and I think no. I think there's many times already, right? A year and a half into this, of me thinking, oh gosh, there's days when I'm like, should we just stop? Should we just stop? But I also know internally there's also people on the other end depending on you. And I'm talking about both internally and externally with customers. And I think that's a personal, really, really personal decision. I think that's not an easy one. But for us and for me, the voice internally is always, you need to keep going, because when I hear stories of nonprofits, or when I hear stories of companies, or when the feedback is, oh my gosh, this worked, and it worked so much better than we had anticipated, we're so excited. That's like, okay. And the more you get that validation from external users, customers, is, for me, that's the validation that, okay, we are building this to make a difference. And that's why we started GiveSpace in the first place. So yeah, I think as long as the need is there, and we're very frugal. I'm very frugal with our funds. My team will tell you that. And so there's a good, and I haven't, as a founder myself, I've invested into the company, but haven't been, there's also that time when you have to gauge personally, right? I think that personal gauge of, okay, I've worked on this for how long, and I also need to survive. So there's so many things to consider, I guess. So that's a hard question to answer for everybody. But for me, yeah, I know we're still going strong.
Yeah, my biggest fear is if I quit, and then a week later, someone call me up. Why did you quit for? I was about to invest money in a company, or you get hundreds of customer calls. We're about to sign up, right? And it's like, what's that meme where like guys you dig in the diamond mine, and he stops one hit before the diamonds, and someone takes it from him and gets all the diamonds. I mean, that's my biggest fear. So Candice, is there anything I should have asked you that it didn't, or anything else you want to talk about?
Well, Jason, you've been doing this a lot longer than I have, so I'd love to hear your answer to, that question, if you have one. Like, when do you know, as an entrepreneur?
I think a lot of it is like, is external driven. Like for me, my real line was given to me by my wife. Like, we're not going to mortgage a house.
Right.
So that's
right.
So it came to now, like I had to mortgage a house, get more money. Yeah, it's as a wrap, right?
Yeah.
Of course, you never like you're working, you might have a personal family emergency, maybe someone gets cancer, or something bad like that happens. You never know external is going to happen, right? Or maybe, I mean, like example, there's a guy in Bunker Labs named Brett Boyer. He had a tech consulting company doing well. He wants to love to do. He got offered a job. He accepted it. Now he's in charge of, I can't remember the title, but basically he's the director of Army. Basically what he does at GM, he finds startups doing stuff in the tech space to build like military vehicles, right?
Oh, cool.
Like a dream job, right? So maybe something that comes along, right?
Right.
And and like, what's it say? Everyone has a price. I mean, maybe you're struggling 2 or 3 years, you're tired of eating peanut butter sandwiches or ramen noodles, right? Your spouse is like, what are we doing, right? And some offers you like a job like out the world, you just never know, right?
Right. Exactly. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. So I forgot to ask you in the pre-talk, but do you have any kind of gift or resource you want to give away? Some people do, some people don't. You can maybe a link to your beta test, or what do you want to do?
Yeah, definitely. If any company would like to try GiveSpace, we're happy to offer free betas, and we're actually launched now. So if you have a Shopify e-commerce store, or any kind of e-commerce presence, marketplace, where you'd like to give back or have your customers give back with you, and donate to causes that matter to both of you, I'd love to, extend the free month trial for anybody who wants to try it, no cost. And then, and any, I guess, early entrepreneurs that would like to, have to connect or get any feedback, or I'm happy to do that as well as time allows. So I think the best way,
that caveat, right? As time allows.
Yeah, as time allows. I do try to always, I do try to mentor a few hours every month. So definitely, I think that's important. And I know I wouldn't be here now without the generosity of mentors that I reached out to. So I always want to give back that support as well. So yeah, I think any of those offers work. If you mention Jason Cavness experience through our website or through LinkedIn, I'm happy to send over a link for that.
Candice, how do you do the situation, or what do you do in this situation?
Oh, hello.
Totally rip off. Is that something you get involved in, or how does that work?
Sorry, it froze on me for a few minutes.
Okay.
I think it was the internet on my end. I apologize.
No worry. So someone emails you or calls you, hey, I gave X amount of money to this nonprofit. It's a total rip off. It's a scam. I lost my money. I want my money back, or something along those lines. It's something you deal with. You say, no, that's between you and the nonprofit, or how's that work?
If they use our platform, then all of our nonprofits are vetted and they are all verified 501c3 charities. So I don't, we've done our checks and balances for that. So I'd love for them to, contact me so we can dig into that further. But yeah, if it's done through our
pretty low
platform,
then.
how does that happen? We haven't, knock on wood, gone through that experience yet.
Great. Hey, Candice, can you share your social media links for you and your company so people can reach out to you?
Sure. LinkedIn is GiveSpace Co, or personal is Candice Dietz, and that's Candice Dietz. So, and those are probably the best ways to reach us, or via email at info@givespace.co.
And to our listeners, we have the links to her gift and social media links on our show notes. You can find the show notes at www.cavnesshrblog.com. And be sure to share this episode with your networks, and be sure to subscribe to the Jason Cavness Experience on your favorite platform. So we're coming to the end of our talk, Candice. Can you give us any last minute advice and wisdom on anything you want to talk about?
Well, I think as we head into a new year, if you haven't done so already, I think a vision board is very powerful. So I would suggest that as a tool. Regardless of where you are or what roles you have in your life that you're fulfilling, I think that's manifesting something that you see and desire for the year and for your life. For me, it's been a very powerful thing. And I think, and place it somewhere where you can see that and hold yourself accountable for that. That's just kind of, as this is the new year, a little tidbit I want to pass on. And then the other thing is, I think we fail sometimes really to set boundaries, and this is something I'm working on myself, to really hold, things that are important to you, and make time for things that are important to you, and say no to things that don't fulfill that right now. And that can change over time. For example, like the mentoring hours. For me, that's very important. And I add that in a few hours every month. So I think that's important to do that, and always be open to meeting and talking to people who may have a difference in opinion or thought than you. I think some of my greatest learning opportunities has been from those conversations.
Candice, thank you for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Jason. It was great speaking with you.
And to our listeners, thank you for your time as well. And remember to be great every day.